Hello and welcome. My name is Igor Ljubuncic. I'm a developer advocate at Canonical. And for the next 30 minutes, I want to talk to you about the art of not being seen. Just a little bit about myself first. As I said, I work at Canonical. I'm a Linux person. I've been a Linux person my whole life. I also write books, and I'm a petrol head. We can discuss that after the session. But the main reason I'm here is to talk to you about why Linux today, when you use it at home, is a disruptive, non-invisible thing. So, as this beautiful image emphasizes, we have the server world, which is very successful, dominates the market, and then we have the desktop, which is kind of on the fringes, forgotten, ignored. Now, since I see that there's a little bit of skepticism, I've bought these beautiful Italian chocolates, Easter eggs, and the rules are as follows. You can ask questions at any point in time, and when you do that, you will get a little chocolate. The reason why I ask you to come down is because, as skilled as I am, I'll probably not reach the higher levels that easily. So, you still have time to move down. Let's talk about a server first for a few seconds. Linux server is extremely successful, and it's used about 70% of websites worldwide. It powers pretty much everything on the infrastructure level, and it comes down to high quality professional support, very few permutations in terms of what you get. The software is curated, and the state is controlled. Even though it's open source, it's also, in a way, a closed community, so you know what you get. On the other hand, on the desktop, we only have about 1 to 2% of users worldwide. We have very little presence, as if you look around you, apart from our own community, very few people will be using Linux or be aware of the fact that they're using Linux. And there are way too many permutations of how this comes to bear when we use it. So just to emphasize why this is a bigger problem, actually. Who here has had a Linux update go wrong on their desktop? Okay. For the sake of the camera, well, the camera is there, so does anyone want to share a story? Why the update went wrong? Dependencies. Okay, so this is actually a highly aerodynamic chocolate, so I might be able to reach way up. The thing is, one of the things that defines Linux is the way it's packaged. So you have an application, and then you have a whole bunch of libraries, dependencies, if you will. And these dependencies are shared across the system. You have a deduplication of code, which is good. You save time, you save space, it's compact, it's handy. But on the other hand, sometimes you may have a thing like this. An application A or B or whatever updates a library, and then a completely irrelevant and unassociated application stops working. And you go like, oh. And it's not your fault, right? Someone updated an application and something else breaks. It's not a good situation to be in. And when that happens, your desktop is no longer invisible. The operating system is a desk on which you work. It enables you to do fun stuff or work. And if it interrupts with your work, it's not invisible. No, it's fine, just ignore me. It's part of the theatrics. Then there's the other problem. Even if you're okay with occasional breakages, what do you choose? If you go on DistroWatch, there's something like 300 Linux distributions currently being actively maintained. Then there's about 10 different desktop environments, 10 different packaging formats. Then all together you end up with thousands and thousands of permutations. So which one do you use? What do you select? Say again? Okay. Who said that? Who said that? But raise your hand. Come on, raise your hand. Who said that? Okay. So the thing is, this is no longer manageable. By the way, is anyone willing to take pictures? I have a Windows phone, by the way, my personal phone, a Windows phone. Can you take a couple of pictures? Yeah, on a Windows phone. Just, yeah. Do I know how to do it? Yeah, just press the button. Yeah, clicky click, and it's good. Just wait for the update. It works. So the thing is, this is no longer manageable in 2018, 2019. This situation where your system breaks because of an update and your application stops working is not something that you want to give your users. And it's recognized in the industry, and it's been a change where applications are becoming containerized. The concept of a container, software container, service container, anything that just gets bundled into one independent thing has become more and more popular. That started with C groups, then we had LXC, then we had Docker, and slowly becoming more and more prevalent in the industry. By the way, I have 40 chocolates. I'm not hearing any questions. Any comments? Okay, okay. And so the idea is, okay, let's try to make software more independent of the environment. So you bundle everything together. You put all your libraries, all your dependencies into a single bundle. That's good. Then you want this bundle to actually be able to run. So if you put it on, say, Fedora and Ubuntu and Debian and Arch, then anyone uses Arch here? Okay, nice to meet you. Yeah? Yeah. So the thing is, if you can port your code from A to B, it's not really important for you to say, I'm using an application A on a distribution. That distribution is no longer relevant. You can use it on A, B, C, whichever distribution you choose. In a way, this is more like what Windows users on the desktop have had for many, many years. Today, for instance, if you have a game, you know that that game will probably run on any Windows from XP to 10. You don't really think about it, just double-click install, next, install a toolbar, and just next, and it's done. You have a game. So maybe we want something like that in Linux. And the answer is yes, we do want something like that in Linux. Over the last few years, there's been a rise of these self-contained application formats, and the landscape pretty much covers 3 players. There's AppImage, which is just self-hosted bundles. You have a file that has a suffix AppImage, just double-click and run it. Then you have Flatpak, which is a community project. You have a sandbox, so there's even a level of control of security and how you manage your application. There's the bundle of code, and it even there is an unofficial store called FlatHub where you can get applications and install them. Something like you have the application stores on your phones, something similar for the desktop. And the last piece where I come in, Snaps, developed originally by Canonical for the Ubuntu phone. You have a concept of sandboxing, security, then there's the bundle of code, and then there's the official store called Snap Store. And this is where I'm going to focus most of the talk here. So if you feel there's a propaganda, this maybe just a little bit of, just a little. But why I want to talk to you about this goes back to the original question. Can you have an application, Linux desktop that's invisible? And how you do that? So some of the concepts that are prevalent in how snaps work. One is confinement. So what is this all about is you don't want yes you do, but you don't really want your application to be able to do anything. And this has become popular on the mobile, right? You install an application, it only has granular permissions to your webcam, to your audio, to your storage, and things like that. So through a number of security mechanisms in the kernel and in the user space, snaps allow you to selectively give your applications permissions. You don't want application to access the disk, it won't. You don't want to give it network, it won't have network. You don't want to allow it to access OpenGL, or you do want to give it, yes you can. So this can be handy in that you have more control over what you're doing. And also if you create a product, it doesn't have to be, even if you're a developer or even just a company deploying something, you can maybe think, okay, this is a group of users that will not have access to network, and in another situation, this application will have access to network and things like that. Any questions? Anything? Or are you all too hungry and starving and just waiting for 1 o'clock? Yes. Who said yes? Who said? Okay. Freshness, point number 2. So, another thing that you get with snaps is automatic updates. Whenever there's an update by a vendor or whoever creates an application, you get an update. So you don't end up in a situation where there's 77 different versions of the same code running in parallel. And especially if you're a vendor, you don't need to think about, oh, I need now to continue supporting things that have been out on the market for 15 years. And then if there is a damage, which can happen and will happen because bugs happen, let's say you break an application. All your other applications are not affected by it. And breakage could be in one of the libraries or something else. It still stays confined. So you don't lose more productivity than you should. It's isolated and minimized. You can roll back your updates, and since snaps aim to disentangle applications from the operating system, you can run new software on old Linux. And you all know this is a problem. If you say run an LTS version of something or a more conservative operating system, let's say CentOS, but you do want the latest stuff, you won't necessarily get it through the official channels. So you can have very old Linux, but have modern software that's not in the official repositories. So you can have the latest Firefox and latest Chrome, and you can have the latest Skype, latest LibreOffice, latest VLC, but you don't have to manually hack it. You get it from the store. Okay, chocolates? Any questions? Anything so far? Yes?
Snaps support partial updates, or is it full-time?
What do you mean by partial updates?
Can you update a single library in your snap?
Of course. You update a component, you repackage it. The question was, do snaps support partial updates? And the follow-up question to that was, can you update just a single library? Yes, from that perspective, that will be a new revision of the software, but if you compare the two, the only difference will be in a single component.
So you don't download the whole package, but download
Delta updates. And the chocolate goes to a lucky gentleman. Snap Store. So if you want to get your software, you don't have to go around the web hunting for it. There's a store. It's relatively pleasantly designed. It's got categories and things like that, and you can and there's support for about 41 different distributions at the moment. So if you use anything from Arch to Ubuntu and in between, you can probably successfully, without any pain, run modern software on your desktop using this mechanism. How do you like the propaganda so far? Is it working? Are you enthused? Chocolate? No? Questions? Okay. The other thing is, the idea is to minimize the permutations, minimize the chaos. So you build once and you know that it's going to work. If the system supports snaps, you don't have to think about any other dependency. You don't have to think about specific use cases where it will break with this desktop environment, this library combination, and this operating system something. If it works reliably and you've tested it, however you built it, it should work well with all other systems that support Snap. So this consistent behavior also means that if you change your system, you continue enjoying the same experience you had. For instance, just an example I put here, Live for Speed is a Windows game. So you would normally install it through Wine. Are you familiar with Wine? Is anyone not familiar with Wine? You all are, or ignoring me. So rather than manually having to install Wine and make sure that you satisfy all the Windows subcomponents, Mono and .NET, it's all packaged by someone who's an expert, and that's their job or their fun. And then you get a game as a single bundle. You install a game and you play it. You don't worry about making things work. That's not your job. You're the user, not the developer. Am I dramatic enough for the pictures? Just black and white filter, it's going to look better. So, metrics. This is another thing that could be useful. Typically, in the Linux world, we don't measure things that much, or if we measure them, we don't do it in a highly structured way. So if you want to know how something works somewhere, you have to kind of do a convoluted way of collecting information. And the Snap Store does support some level of weakly active devices metrics so you can get a sense of how well your application is performing, how many people are using it, how your revisions are working. And this is just an example without the name because, but this is something that went in about a period of a year from something like 50,000 devices to about 350,000 devices. So if you deploy something, you want to see how it works, and it could be a community project, you don't have to be the developer. It's good. Chocolate? I spent money on this chocolate. I like to have it eaten by my audience. So, anything? Okay, okay. Infrastructure, you don't have to worry about the cost of things. We have our own infrastructure, give it away for free. We have a build system. You can integrate your application directly into our cloud. Just use that as your platform. You don't have to think about, I'll have a build server, I'll have this and that. You can absolutely do that. Or you can just hook up a GitHub repository directly into the build service and that's it. It's also quite convenient. And again, this is not just purely for developers. It's for any project that wants to maintain their software. It could be a system administration tool that you have and you want to deploy. You can still use this mechanism. But then, in the end, all this is just an enabler for how to do things. The main purpose is to provide users with a superior experience. Because if you don't enjoy what you're doing and the desktop doesn't do it for you, it's not a good product. So now this is a really important question here. We have a, this is a screenshot of a video, of a movie. Does anyone know what this is? If you do, you'll get more than one chocolate at a time.
It's written down below.
It is written down below. It is written down below. But Monty Python had the How Not to Be Seen sketch, where people hide in the bushes and then they get exploded with dynamite. But this is the idea, right? The operating system should be invisible for you. You shouldn't know where the operating system is. You should just come to something, a device, open it, and work, and enjoy yourself. It doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, when you drive your car, do you really care what operating system powers the computer?
Yes.
Yes, you do. Of course you do. Who said yes? Not everyone. I heard 2 or 3. Who else said yes? Who wants chocolate? This is your chance to kind of a low-level effort and get a chocolate still. Okay. But that's pretty much that. Now, a couple of important things. One, if you really want to know more about this, I'm running a workshop tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock in 30 minutes. There's going to be chocolate. The other thing is, you can email me. My email is written here. Or you can talk to me outside. I'm also going to hand out you beautifully styled business cards. We are also always hiring. So if you think you have skills that kills, feel free to talk to me or send your information over. We're looking for developers, for companies, ISVs, anything. Whoever wants to cooperate, who wants to do good things. You don't have to be a developer. Just come forward and talk to us. And please do ask a couple of questions so I feel better about myself. Well, please raise your hands. And then, so I'll go with fresh faces. You got your chocolate. Start with you. Yes. What happened to what? Ubuntu phone. It unfortunately did not succeed.
That much we know.
Why? It's not my story to share. I'll leave that to Mark to share that story. But I think it was a big struggle in a very competitive and saturated market. Just even look at Microsoft and Windows Phone and how much effort went into that, and we still have duopoly today with iOS and Android. I'm aiming at you. Be ready.
Do you want to help with this question?
Okay. So, 1 second. Sorry, there was the guy here with the blue shirt first, but I won't forget you. There's a song by Depeche Mode, I think. Forget about me. No, it's fine. Yes.
So yeah, we can publish our snaps on the Snap Store. What prevents us from actually like hijacking a namespace before some project does it?
Okay.
Let's say the GitHub say we're gonna have
So-
an atom, but I publish it before them.
Okay, oh, sorry. That's a very good question. So the question is, can someone take, I don't know, for instance, GitHub name? So we have a list of reserved names that we won't give out. That's the big projects. B, if you do find someone that has taken your name, you can file a name dispute and we'll try to fix it in a nice and democratic way. And it's happened before and we've done it successfully. We don't do automatic decisions as in someone files a dispute and your name is taken away or something like that. We actually discuss that with people face to face. You don't work with machines, you work with humans, myself included. Ante, yes, please. By the way, he's a colleague, just so you know.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the phone thing, if
Yes.
it's not too late. I think the fact that he has Windows Phone and he's the only one tells you that there's pretty much no market for the fourth competitor. And there's even no market for the third competitor. The phone market is dead the same way the desktop market is dead.
I actually have an Android as well, but the Windows Phone makes people excited. And you get your chocolate. You get your chocolate. Okay, yes, another question or two. Yes.
Can you actually build a whole distro or a large part of distro with this way? Because just for several applications it's okay. But,
Okay.
and I even have another question.
Before the second question, the question is, can you do more than just individual applications? So this is an unofficial thing, but for instance, KD guys have packaged a test version of Plasma Desktop as a snap. You can install the whole KD desktop as a snap. It's still kind of testing, it's beta, so it doesn't work as perfectly as you would expect, but it's doable. You had a second question, but before that, does anyone else have another question? Yes, please.
If snaps are so great,
I didn't say they're so great. They're good, and we're trying to make them better. They're not so great.
Okay.
They're good.
Are you gonna also use them in server environment or?
Oh yes.
Also.
Oh, sorry for not mentioning that. I didn't do my pitch well enough. Snaps work for IoT, for cloud, for server. We build for 6-7 different architectures in the build service. You have S390, you have ARM-HF, you have ARM7i, you have AMD64, i30-386. So absolutely, we're actually strongly aiming at the IoT devices, and that's a completely different story. There's a thing called Ubuntu Core, which is an even more secure and more containerized environment. But that's not quite the focus of this session. We can talk about it.
And
but
quick question, are those chocolates vegan or?
Are they what?
Are they vegan chocolates?
I wouldn't know. Try them and tell me. Yes, you had another question. There's still more chocolate, so.
How does this solution, I mean snaps, compares with the other ones? And by that I don't just mean AppImage, Flatpak, I also mean, for example, modules, some compartmentalization like cubes, like Docker. With regards to performance, usage of memory, usage of disk, easiness of use, yeah.
This is a very complicated question which I can't really answer at this point. We have some of our strong points. We have points where we need to improve performance in some cases. There are cases where competitor technologies make more sense. And this is not a like black and white situation, just use snaps and ignore everything else. You can still use Debian and RPM packages. You can still use Docker. You can use snaps. Just find the optimal medium where you get the best value and the best value for desktop is the seamless usage of applications. Yeah. Ante, another question? No, you still get one more. And more. Oh!
So, just to clarify this one, there's often question how much is Snap different from Docker? And if you know the Docker, actually every Docker container you start has its own IP address, right? Mm-hmm. Right. This, imagine on your desktop having every application having its own IP address or having its own network stack. This is basically what you're avoiding here. You're having a purely just application containerized, while Docker is kind of between the operating system and the application. So it contains a part of the operating system and part of the application. There.
Thank you. Sure. Anything else? Yes?
What would you say is the biggest advantage of your system against other systems?
That's not a fair question. So the question is, why are snaps better than the competition?
Only one biggest advantage.
I don't want to disrespect the competitors, but I think the big advantage is the official store. I would say, if anything, is the fact that you have an authoritative place where you can find applications. But I don't want to disrespect AppImage or Flatpak. I use them personally as well. There's nothing wrong with them. And this is not a crusade against anyone. This is more around making your life better. That's all. Any other questions? Yes? Yes?
What about disadvantages of snaps?
Disadvantage? Well, depends on what you need or you don't need. But the disadvantages potentially would be, this is a new paradigm. How do you install this? How do you manage this? You may also find that snaps are slightly bigger in space or much bigger in space than ordinary applications, because you have to put everything in one bundle. And you would say, oh, now I'm bloating my disk. Or if you want to package for this, you're familiar with the old stuff, this new stuff you need to learn, which we'll talk about tomorrow in the workshop. How do you build snaps? This is a new world, new language, new syntax. So there's that level as well. I would always start with what's your end goal. If you want to have a simple desktop solution, and then derive from there. If you enjoy the thrill of compiling your own stuff, being an Arch user, he's on the phone, so he missed the joke. Yes. Any other? The last question maybe, then we have lunch. Yeah. Yes.
Does Canonical actually vouch for the snaps in Snap Store?
In what sense?
In the sense that, yeah, you can download, they are secure.
Yes. Is that a question?
Yeah, in that
yes.
sense.
We want to make sure that when you use our store, you can trust it. So there's cryptographic signatures, there's two-factor authentication sign-on for developers. We have automatic and manual checks of anything that gets uploaded to the store. Can there be problems? Yes. Have there been problems? Yes. Is it optimal? No, we're trying to make it optimal. But without trust, it's not going to work. And that's the main focus, of course. Chocolate? There's free chocolate here, so you can just do a Hunger Games scenario and come here after this. I would like to thank you for your time. Maybe see some of you tomorrow or outside. Thank you.